This is Kingston Live, and as our name suggests, we zero in on the arts in Kingston. But what exactly does it mean to be a Kingston artist? Is it where you start, or where you grew? Or is it just the scene you most associate with? On this episode, we're sitting down with a major player in broadcast music television who didn't start locally, but was adopted by the city, and is here to talk about his journey. Since the early 1990s, Bill Welychka has been a staple on Canadian music television. Though he started out as a video editor, he quickly made his way in front of the camera as a VJ on Much Music, hosting not only Video Flow but shows like Outlaws and Heroes and Clip Trip. In the following years, Bill took on opportunities across the country from Much More Music to Breakfast Television in Edmonton. Jump ahead a few years, and Bill made the move to Kingston, where he joined CKWS-TV as a host and producer. Though his work has shifted, Bill continues to be a force within the Canadian music scene. You can regularly catch him at events around town and interviewing musicians both local and from abroad. We sat down with Bill to talk about his new book, A Happy Has-Been, and his life on camera in Canadian music.
And it's got this music scene that we just felt in our bones was we were gonna click with, and we did.
Wow, man, that was amazing. Like, where are you from? Like, Kingston. And they're like, but where are you from?
Hello, this is Kingston Live. It's John. Ange Stever is with me.
Thank you. Hello.
And Bill Welychka.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, and anytime I can hang out with John, it's amazing. And I haven't seen Ange in a while, so this is like I have a huge smile on my face right now because I miss Ange and I haven't seen her in a long time.
Special reunion. I love it.
Yay.
Oh, it's always good to see you, Bill.
Well, thank you for giving us an excuse to put you on the podcast and writing this book.
I've been looking forward to this one. I've done about 60 interviews for the book now, and I was really wanting to do this one. So
excellent.
Thank you for the invite.
No, it's great.
Are you kidding? Life is great. I get to walk around, spend the past 2 months talking about myself. Who wouldn't want that? I'm being sarcastic, by the way.
Well, I was going to say, has it been weird? Because usually you're the one doing the interview, and you've been in a position in the last little while where people are talking to you about your book.
I knew that I would have to promote it when it was ready to come out. And I have no problem with that. I work early mornings, so I'm up at 3 a.m. for Global News Morning here in Kingston. And the only thing that is sort of different now is that I don't have enough napping time when I come home, because inevitably I'll have an interview to do from home, which is okay. This is, I made the decision. But lately, it's also been traveling to different chapters around Ontario to do book signings, which I love because I'm meeting strangers with beautiful comments. And, that gets you through. And then now there's this new Much Music documentary that I'm also been promoting. So it's like 2 separate things happening simultaneously that are sort of related, but not really. So yeah, I can't wait for December when I put the brakes on and say, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sleep the whole month. And then it starts up again in January, and that's okay.
I have to know, as a fellow author, are you running out of things to write in the inscription at the start for people?
Yes.
Because, you want to be original every time and give everyone their due, but then you're like, oh, man, I don't know how many times I've wrote Keep Shining.
My latest one is... may all your dreams come true.
Oh, okay, nice, yeah.
But I always say something like thanks for watching or thanks for reading.
Yeah.
Because you are thanking them. They're spending money on something that, they could spend their money on anything, and then their focus is buying something that you put out there, and there is an enormous amount of gratitude that I have. And so all you really, at the bottom line for me, is saying thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your time you're spending reading this. Thank you for getting it. But it's funny. I have to change my new signing to something else now.
Have all your dreams come true, Bill? Because A Happy Has-Been, you think about that title, it's kind of like you've been there, you've done that, you've moved on, or, not really moved on. You continue to do what you do. But, the title kind of screams at you. So can we talk about that for a sec?
I love the title. There's been mixed reactions for the title because it is condescending, and I know it's self-deprecating. I'm the first person to admit that. I don't take myself seriously. I take what I do seriously.
Yes, you do.
But, everyone's got a story. Mm-hmm. Everyone. You do. John does. Everyone's got a story. And I spend all my entire career telling people stories, whether it was Robert Plant or Madonna, or whether it was a local...
Pavna Varma from the United Way.
From the United Way, yeah. She's got a great story, too.
Absolutely.
And so the title, I think, works on two levels, various levels. Most people know me from a certain point in time in Canada, in Toronto, on this national music video service in a major market. And then I walked away from that and I took a job in Edmonton. So there are people around Canada, if they heard the name Bill Welychka recently, would say, "Oh, I remember that guy. Yeah, he had the long hair for a while. Is he dead? Whatever happened to him? Oh, he's still working. He's a has-been," because they don't know where I am now.
Yeah.
But for 35 years, I've continued to work in television, just in a smaller and smaller market. And, there are people who have followed my career from day one, which blows me away. I still get emails from people that used to write me letters back in 1994, 1995.
Wow. And
there are people in Kingston that don't know that I had this music journalism past, some of the older viewers. So I love the title. The important part of the title, though, is the happy part of the title. Mm-hmm. Because I am the happiest now than I've been in years and years and years. And that's a testament to the city. It's a testament to where I work, who I work with, the people of Kingston. So, yeah, that's the title.
Well, that was something I wanted to talk about, too, because something I liked about the book was it's so personal and it's so honest and it's so frank, and you get into some pretty high highs but some pretty low lows as well.
Just like anyone's life,
yeah.
Like I said. It's funny, you say there's some personal things in there. The first draft, Amanda, my girlfriend, read it and said, "You can't put that in there. My parents are going to read this book, Bill." And so oh yeah, you're right. So I did pare back some personal stuff.
Okay.
Like what? We're not putting it in written form forever.
Drugs,
We're just talking about
orgies,
it.
all-night parties.
Okay, keep going. We'll
serious.
get the details later. Okay.
I'm dead serious. Ange.
I mean, we can get into it. I'm fine. I asked the question.
In case her parents are listening to this, I don't want to go there either.
Okay.
But yeah, everyone has a story, and in order for anyone to be, if you're going to tell your story, I think you can't hide from things. So yeah, I talk about depression. I talk about things that maybe I shouldn't. I talk about some reckless days in Toronto where I was a bit trampy in my 20s, maybe even 30s, maybe even part of my 40s. I don't know. Yeah, so warts and all, I guess. But I also wanted the book to, it works on a couple of levels. I didn't want it to be the ramblings of some old guy going, "Let me tell you about the time I interviewed David Bowie." No, it's not that. There are some stories in there about music journalism and who I've been blessed to spend time with and interview. But there's also some lessons I think I've learned over the years that I share with people. And ultimately, to anyone in Kingston that reads this book, you'll recognize that it's a bit of a love letter to Kingston as well.
Yes, well, and that's something we wanted to talk about as well. And, someone might be listening to this and thinking, well, why is Bill Welychka on? He's not a musician. He's not a venue owner. He's not a promoter. And he's here for at least a couple of reasons. First of all, yeah, we wanted to get you on from the start. And so thank you for giving us an excuse.
And just saying, okay, now talk about the orgies.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm waiting patiently, okay? It's called foreplay. Keep going, Johnny.
But this is why I invite you. Yeah.
Oh, just in case somebody, their mind wandered for a minute. They're back with us. Okay.
Yes.
There we go.
Just say orgy and everyone's back on board.
What do you say?
I don't remember what I was getting at. So
reasons for having Bill on.
Yes. So you bring kind of an interesting perspective, I think, because with Kingston Live, part of what we do is to promote and celebrate Kingston's amazing music scene. But we've been on this little side quest for the last little while of trying to figure out, like, why is it so great? Why is Kingston's talent disproportionate to its population? So
have you figured it out yet?
I've got some theories. I think part of it is certainly its geography, being equidistant between Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. Like Canada is a very big place. And something that Finney McConnell brought up when we talked to him a couple of years ago that I hadn't even considered before was he was talking about how huge Canada is. It's very hard to tour Canada, which may be why a lot of, like American acts will have their U.S. tour and then they might go to Montreal and Vancouver and that's it.
Well, think about it in the U.S. You can look at it a couple ways. You can spend an hour on the road and hit the next big city in the U.S. In Canada, to hit the next big city, you got to spend like 3 or 4 days on the road with a lot of these smaller towns in between. And the other thing, too, I've noticed about Canada versus the U.S. in terms of music community is 90% of our population lives along within an hour or 2-hour drive of the U.S. border. So we're all clustered along the U.S. border, whereas I think 95% of the U.S., 98% of the U.S. population is not near the border. So it brings up this whole thing, well, why do we know so much about the U.S. and they don't know anything about Canada? Oh, the U.S. is ignorant about Canada. They don't know enough about us. Well, it's not their fault. It's geography's fault that, we grow up exposed to U.S. culture because of, we watch their TV channels. I grew up in Welland. I was always watching Buffalo cartoons. But in the U.S., they don't grow up exposed to Canadian culture, and that's not their fault. They're not ignorant. They just didn't have the opportunity to. So, yeah, I think a Canadian musician traveling this country is at a disadvantage right off the top.
Yeah, to be in Kingston is a huge advantage because you're so close to those major centers, right?
Right.
But when you hear about people starting to travel, it's like, oh, and then we fly over Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta,
Yeah. And then they get mad at Toronto.
So this is a great place to be.
Lethbridge, Alberta hates Toronto. Halifax hates Toronto. Winnipeg hates Toronto, the center of the universe. And I experienced that when I lived in Edmonton for a year. It's like, oh, you're from Toronto. They treat you very suspicious.
Yeah.
Oh, you're from Toronto. What are you up to? And there's this sense of entitlement that Torontonians have, but it's not Toronto's fault,
Does Kingston have a reputation?
You nailed it. As I don't think it's just music, though. I think it's culture. I think it's the arts. There's a lot of poets. There's a lot of authors. There's a lot of artists in terms of visual arts. A lot of painters. There's something in the water here when it comes to creativity. It used to be when you drive down the 401. Where history and innovation thrive is what Kingston was known for. And I used to always say it should be where history, innovation, and creativity thrives. Who knows why, but, it's one of the most beautiful cities, and I love talking to visitors to Kingston where they say, oh, you have such a beautiful city here. And I'm like, I know, I'm a transplant. I'm not from here. I wasn't born here. I've visited Kingston many times before I actually called it home, but I can't imagine living in another city. I really can't. And you're from the county. You were born here. It's in your own backyard. It's like living in Toronto, never going to see the CN Tower. It's like you see it, but you've never visited it.
Yeah.
And with Kingston, for those that are from here or within a very, very close drive, think about it. Like, this is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It really is.
You've interviewed a lot of musicians from the city as well. I know Paul Langwall wrote the foreword in your book. It's kind of interesting to just, your focus is a little bit different, but you'll still get pulled back into the music stuff. And I know there's a blurb in your book where you mention a lot of different Kingston musicians on the scene. And I think that was special for a lot of people who got to see their name in there.
I want to add something to that. So, Bill, you talk a lot in the book about perfect circle moments. Could you first explain to the listener what that means?
Oh my God. I look back and, I've been loving music. I'm not a musician. I don't play. I know like 3 sloppy chords on the guitar. I know Night Moves by Bob Seger. I can string that together sloppily. But, I'm a fan of music. I have been for as long as I can remember. I have older brothers. I got into their David Bowie records and stuff when I was very, very young. But I would consider myself a fan of music since kindergarten. It's never stopped. growing up, loving all kinds of artists, all kinds of music. In high school, music became a badge to me. You know, wearing a jean jacket with Led Zeppelin's patch on it, or Ozzy Osbourne, or years later having Robert Smith from The Cure's poster in my bedroom, or pictures in my locker of the Police, or, you know, whatever. Music when you're 12, 13, 14, 16, 19, 20, 21 years old was always important to me. I think like it is for a lot of people. And then years later, without trying or without seeking it out, having to spend time with these people, interviewing them, sometimes bonding with them, sometimes becoming friends with them, sometimes being on the road with them. To me, what I call that perfect circle. It's a touchstone to a younger time, to an older time that brings back amazing memories. And yeah, there's these little circles that I absolutely adore and love, and the book is filled with them. And I hope everyone knows what I'm talking about, because it is a beautiful feeling.
That's perfect, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but you've, I believe, created a lot of perfect circle moments. One in particular, like I grew up watching you on Much Music, so for me this is fun to get to interview you for a change. But I remember, as I've been on your show on CKWS a number of times for various things, including Kingston Live.
And chicken wings.
Yes, yes. We discovered Bill doesn't have a high tolerance for spicy food.
I used to, but as I get older, yeah.
I want to. Oh, can you roll the tape back for me later on that one?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
dig that up. Yeah,
Perfect,
sorry
thank
we
you.
did that to you. I remember the first time I was on your show, and I left, and I had this thought of, I think I've made it. Geddy Lee and I have now been interviewed by the same person. And that was very exciting to me. But it's funny because I've talked to other musicians in Kingston who have had similar reactions. And I feel like chatting with you has almost become kind of a rite of passage for certain people in the community in the time that
Man,
you've
what
been
an
here.
honor, though. That is, thanks for saying that. It is a complete honor. I don't take it for granted, and I don't expect comments like that. I'm humbled by them, and it just makes me appreciate life even more that I've experienced that. And, you know, doing this book tour, I've had people come up to me and say, do you mind signing this? No, sure. What's your name? And then I'll hand them the book back, and then they'll look at me, and then they'll say, I got to tell you something. And I'm like, oh, geez, what did I do?
Here we go.
What happened? What don't you like? And then they'll proceed to tell me how I was their friend growing up, and that they watched me, and my interviews made them fall in love with a certain artist or a certain song I was excited about on Much. They gave it a listen, and it became their favorite band. And they would, like, just story after story of little touchstones that they had about me. And you don't expect that. You know, and if you're in the Tragically Hip, I'm sure you hear that 25 times a day.
Yeah.
If you're on the road, or if you're Paul Langlois and touring for this new record, he's got people coming up to him, I think 25 times a day, saying, and he has the same reaction. He's humbled by it, and he's blown away by it, and he says, thank you. But to be on the receiving end of that, to me, it's a huge compliment. It again makes me so fortunate to be alive, and when I wake up, I'm the happiest guy in the world.
I'm reminded of a time when we worked together for several years, and one of the gals at work asked a bunch of people to help her move, and several of us showed up. And I remember at one point she turned to you and she was like, "Oh my God, Bill, you've interviewed Prince and you're helping me move?" And it was just one of those moments where I was like, yeah,
Kristen Kosmanuka, I think her name was.
Yeah, it was Ray, Kristen and Ray. Yeah, they were moving in together. We were helping them out.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I just remember it was so funny. But it's like, you know, yeah, you have done that stuff. When you look back and you think about some of those interviews and those times, is the time just like, does it seem like a long time ago or yesterday?
It seems about right that it happened. And I've been in Kingston now for 12 years. And I know I was in Ottawa for 6 years before that, and a year in Edmonton, and 5 years at Much More Music, which takes us back to around 2000, which would have been when I left Much Music to go to Much More Music. But yeah, the timing seems right. But I remember having drinks with a friend one night. We were talking about, you know, he's asking me who I've interviewed and stuff, and he had a little game, and I think we went about 25 bands that he brought up where I said, yep, interview them. Yep. I think he finally got to like Boston and said, no, I've never interviewed Boston.
No, not them.
And he's like, wow, everyone I just mentioned you've done.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that is kind of cool.
Is there anyone you didn't get to interview that you wish you had?
Just some dead people.
Yeah.
But lately, like I love Lady Gaga. I love Taylor Swift. I think those would be fun interviews.
Yeah.
But no one. And that's the amazing thing. Like every person that I've ever I'm talking about a big fan of, I've spent time with. And it's a pretty fortunate position to be in. And even some bands that I wasn't even a fan of, but were huge. Madonna, I'd never listened to Madonna when I go home, but I know that.
Didn't you go to her home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was at Madonna's house one time. Yeah, that's in the book, that funny story. Yeah. You know what's sad about the book is when I was putting it together, a lot of names, record company people or people that I used to work with aren't in the business anymore. It's changed so much and it's so sad. You know, I went back to this Much Music documentary, the premiere screening in Toronto last month. And at the after party was a lot of people that I used to work with who aren't in the business anymore, or record company people that dropped by. You know, when you think of the 90s, I think was the peak of the music industry. And in Canada, Warner Music Canada, downtown Toronto, probably had 40 to 50 people working in there now.
Yeah.
Now I think Warner Music Canada is out of someone's basement in
like
Toronto.
4 dudes and a... Yeah.
It is sad what happened to the music industry. And it's affected, no one takes a chance on bands anymore, or no one fosters new talent. Which is why a band like Glorious Sons have come out and right out of the box were successful. And you don't see that anymore. And lucky for them, but, bands would be signed to a record label. If the first album didn't do that well, the record company would spend time with them and foster the talent until, hopefully it broke.
Now you got to have proven numbers before they even consider.
God. Yeah, which is why I'm so happy for their success, because it can still happen.
Yeah.
Where you can be big in Canada, tour the US, go tour Europe, and have a name.
Yeah. I wonder if that contributes to, we talked about this earlier before we hit record, this sort of recent nostalgia for Much Music. Obviously the documentary 299 Queen Street West has something to do with that. But I feel
think
like
it's that 90s resurgence, right? And that was so much a part of the 90s. Like, I grew up in the 90s. That was my age 10 to 20. So huge influences in music coming out at that time. We listened to a lot of like alternative Pearl Jam, to the pop stuff. It was all over the place, but Much Music was where you went to like find that music, to watch videos, to, everything is so accessible now. I think younger people listening are like, yeah, whatever, but they don't understand that like you had to go and like tape stuff on a VHS tape to like rewatch back. Like it wasn't as easy and accessible as it is today.
It wasn't at your fingertips.
It was not at your fingertips. And I think too, a lot of people appreciate your role in the industry, Bill, and at that time, because nowadays, like everybody has a podcast, so-and-so, they're 15 minutes, but like you did this for years. You still do this just in a different capacity. And like, I think it's incredible. I've watched you at work for years. You're so dedicated to your craft, interviewing one person over another. You never saw like, let's say a judgment, you know what I mean? A big star versus someone coming in to talk about a charity. You had the same enthusiasm and dedication.
Thank you for noticing.
So, absolutely. I don't think anyone at our workplace would have gone unnoticed.
I'm in a fortunate position that I still get to do what I love to do, and that is edit and produce, which I love, and interview people and tell their story, and I still get to work with music if I care to in interviewing bands I love. But John and I were talking about this earlier before you got here, and that is, I think I noticed a long time ago, it's sort of the 10-15 year rule, where you need 10-15 years away from something to look back on it fondly. And that's why, people weren't nostalgic about the 90s and the 2000s. We needed a separation from the 90s. Same like with disco in the 70s. In the 80s, disco was a terrible, bad word. But in the 90s, disco classics were getting sampled. by dance acts again. I think you need 10 or 15 years away from something to look back fondly. And I think, that's all about nostalgia. And so, there's something about much music lately that is being considered nostalgic. I think a lot of it has to do with parents trying to explain to their kids. And I've heard this from people. It's like explaining to kids, if we wanted to watch music videos, we would rush home to watch much music. I did that in high school. And the kids can't comprehend that. It's like, you just don't go to your computer. We didn't have computers. And same with watching interviews. I think what killed much music wasn't so much YouTube and the proliferation of having things at your fingertips. I think, and I've heard it blamed on people's short attention span, where they want it now. And I remember one of the reasons why I wanted to leave was because I came back with this, and I talk about this in the book, with a David Bowie interview that I was going to turn into an hour special. And my boss at the time said, "Is it going to get ratings? I'm not sure if it'll get ratings." And that's when I thought, okay, I'm done. You're questioning if David Bowie's going to get ratings. And knowing that I could let the interview breathe, because he's an intelligent guy. He's got things to say. And everything at that point became about a 10-second soundbite, surrounded by pictures and music. And it became who's screwing who's in rehab, who's dating who's getting divorced. And that's, I think that's
TMZ.
Yeah. And, and what I think I've been proven right in the fact that people love seeing interviews again is look at the stuff that's on YouTube, like 5, 10, 20-year-old interviews with whoever that go for 30 minutes, and there's like millions of views. Like, people, given the opportunity, if they were offered a great interview, would watch it.
Well, and podcasts are an obvious one too. I mean, you can look at the media and say, oh, well, there's TikTok, it's these short videos. But that's one option. But something like 30% of the population listens to podcasts. That is a long form, audio only, immersive kind of experience. So there's an audience for everything right now. And there's a place for everything right now.
Yeah, if you care to listen, if you choose to want to get into something, it's there. And so, that short attention span argument doesn't really hold water for me. I know for some people that's how they consume their entertainment. I like meat, I like to get into things. I like to experience things. And I was fortunate enough in a time where I could do that with interviews.
Thank you for listening to Kingston Live. Be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. For more great Kingston music, check out the Kingston Live playlist on Spotify. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out kingstonlive.ca.
When you wrote the book, did you find yourself getting into like a writer's trance at all, where you just all of a sudden the information just started coming out and it didn't stop?
I didn't take time off for it. It was something I would do on weekends. And I really didn't plan to write a book. I just started writing stories down. I started doing some podcasts.
Was this during COVID? Was it kind of a COVID thing?
Yeah, I was a guest on all these podcasts that I kept getting asked. And so I started writing things down, and I just started writing one weekend, just on weekends. And then I realized, I think halfway through 2021, this is a book. I'm starting to form a book here. It's weird. So then I just kept at it, and then by the end of the year, into 2022, I kept at it again, and realizing, I'm writing a book here. I have chapters. I have, and the fun part was just writing. And I remember I would make a list of things that would just pop into my head, and how am I going to introduce that? How am I going to get into that topic? And then you just sort of just write. And there were weekends that I don't remember writing when I'd always go back the weekend after to look what I wrote the weekend before, and you end up changing it, moving stuff around. But it's like I don't remember writing that last weekend. Yeah, it just goes. Yeah. And you get on a little stream of consciousness, and totally, might have had something to do with the glasses of wine or the beer, maybe. But
I remember reading John Cleese's biography that came out a few years ago, and this wasn't his line. He was quoting somebody else, but he was talking about writing, and he said, "It's hard to start and it's hard to stop."
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I was going to sit down to write a book, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But because I just sort of stumbled on it
Right.
and writing things and organizing things. What really helped too was when I first moved to Kingston, I got asked to write for the Kingston Whig Standard, a monthly column. And I thought, who's going to care? No one's going to. Yeah, I'll give it a crack at it. I thought it might last 3 or 4 months. It went for 4 or 5 years and ended up getting syndicated around the country. And so I pulled out all those columns and just started looking at the topics and sort of getting a lot of old stories that way and forming things. And but yeah, like where do you start talking about your life if you're going to do that? And I think where I started...
The birth canal. No.
I think the first chapter, I don't know why, but I started it in 99 towards the end of Much Music and how I was starting to think about the end. And it's a weird place to start a book.
Right,
Then you go back
and
then you bring it up to date. But you mentioned Paul Langlois writing the foreword. I knew I wanted someone that people would know. I knew I wanted someone that has known me for a while. Maybe not best friends, but... when I thought about Paul, I thought, okay, that would be amazing because I love the hip. And I remember asking him late last year, and he goes, yeah, he'd love to do it. And I thought, okay, he'd be busy with something. And he said, okay, great, he'll do it. Wow, that's cool. And then I remember emailing him in February saying the first draft is due by the publisher. Can I get that forward from you that you said you were going to take a crack at? And emailed back and said, oh, yeah, I'm in Costa Rica right now with Joanne, his wife. Give me a couple days. And then in a couple of days, he sent it to me, he emailed it to me, and I'm reading it, and I cried.
Aww.
And I consider myself a fan of the hip, first and foremost, interviewing them for so many times over the years, but then moving to Kingston and solidifying friendships with the guys and their families, as you have done. And... yeah, I cried, and it was one of my favorite parts of the book is the foreword. Yeah,
The part I didn't write.
and the part I didn't write, exactly.
But it was about me, okay?
But you've known the hip guys for a long time too, John, and they're not like huggy, emotional guys. You know, to their families they are, I'm sure, but they're very quiet and they're beautiful human beings. But for Paul to say some of the things that he did, it was just like, oh, he likes me. He really likes me. Yeah.
Well, when you came to Kingston, you mentioned you had spent a lot of time in Kingston before you moved here. Were you sort of surprised by the relationship that the band had with the city? Because something that I've come back to in the podcast before is, I'll talk to my, non-Kingston friends about the hip and you'll just see Rob Baker just out walking the dog and they're like, really? How did that hit you, seeing their relationship with the city?
One of the things that struck me pretty early on was the amount of charity work they have done for the city over the years. That last tour in 2016, I was putting together a 30-minute hip special for Global Kingston, and blown away by them running it on the big screen that afternoon for August 20th, 2016 at Market Square. But I was finding all these old stories we had in our library at Global Kingston, and it seemed every month we were following them at some charity for Kingston. Might have been one member, it might have been two, might have been the whole band, but they have constantly given back. And years ago asked Rob Baker about that. And he goes, you know what? At the time, it was easy for us to say, we're going to make this into a charity because everyone wanted a free ticket. Everyone wanted a backstage pass. And his response would be like, no, this is a charity. Everyone pays. All seats are paid for. If you want to come, it's a charity. We're giving the money to charity, or a portion of. And that's what they've stuck doing the entire career. And not just for Kingston, but all over the world.
And that's another one of the reasons why I think the Kingston music scene works the way it does. It really is a community, and people like the Tragically Hip, and Sarah Harmer is another example. People that got fame not only choose to live here, but they're involved in the community.
Absolutely. Look at Sarah's annual benefit Christmas concert. And I love how you hear one musician guitar was stolen, and another musician will, lend their guitar to the gig or whatever. And it's just, there's so many, and so many charities in this city. But what I love too is that the community at large steps up every time. Look at the United Way goal. It's surpassed every year. Mm-hmm. Pretty lofty numbers too. But the city cares. They care about what's happening in their own backyard, and they care on bigger levels as well. And I don't think there's a more generous community than Kingston across Canada. I mean that. I really, really believe it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's something beautiful about the people here, and there's something caring, and there's something authentic. It's easy to fall in love with not just the city, but its people as well, and the culture of Kingston. And I caught onto that very early.
Oh, I can tell. That's all in the book, and there's a lot of love for Kingston. There's a lot of love for Kingston's music. There's a whole bunch of shout-outs. I was really pleasantly surprised to see. There was love for Cassador and Miss Emily and Chris and Dee. And
there's, I'm pretty sure I might do a second edition, because there's enough that has happened since the end of writing that book to now. Easily another 2 or 3 chapters, certainly an epilogue, and some additions to other chapters that I would like to make, and I'm keeping notes of that now. There was about 10 names that when the book was done, it's like, damn, I forgot them. Oh, damn, oh, them too. Oh, I hope they don't read the book and not see their name.
You missed Neil Peart in your list of past people.
I've never interviewed Neil.
Okay. That occurred to me as well.
Yeah. Talking about people that have passed on that I've interviewed. I've never interviewed Neil. Isn't that funny?
That makes sense,
Did you
actually.
interview Getty?
He was always the most antisocial. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he averaged one interview every 10 or 15 years.
Felt that way, yeah.
But yeah.
You had to climb out from behind that drum kit. There's a lot of drums there.
But as I was writing the book, people were dying. And I remember every now and then having to pull an old interview to show a little bit of it, and it was starting to happen a lot, like almost on a monthly basis or something. And yeah, even since the book is printed, we've lost other people, and so I've been jotting down those names too. So yeah, lots of love for Kingston, its music scene, its restaurants. I'm curious if you have a favorite music venue in the city, or some favorite venues. Wow. The other thing I talk about is the size of the venues here. It ranges from a tiny stage like Musiki to full-on huge arena like the Leon Center. I love the Mansion. You know what I never experienced that I wish I have is the Manor.
Oh, yes.
Likewise.
Yeah.
I guess you were too young.
That was, I think, before my time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before your time too.
Yeah.
We're the same time, Steve and I.
Yeah, we're timed at the
I'm
same.
the same time as you.
You're a little time.
I'm a little older. If we were in high school, I would have been a senior. You
would have been the guy that bought her alcohol when we were underage. That's what you would have been.
That's true, actually. But yeah, I would have loved to experience the Manor. Yeah. And I'm sure we will when the Hip documentary is out next year. I was talking with Mike Downey, and he has gathered some stuff that the band doesn't even know about. He's uncovered. Should I say this?
Yes.
No. I'm just wondering, would he get mad? Do you think he listens to the podcast? He uncovered some film of a university project of Gord's that was never turned in as an assignment. They found it in his locker, featuring all the guys from the Hip when they first started.
Oh, wow.
And it's an old university film project.
Cool.
And he found these old canisters. Anyway, I'm talking too much. There's going to be some amazing stuff that he's uncovered.
Okay.
That the band isn't even aware of.
Neat. How scary for the band.
Yeah. What is this?
Well, there's another assignment. that he told me about, that he found someone did. I can't say. Well, I'll tell you.
You can't start that. Keep going.
I'll tell you after. I'll tell you after the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, another connection we have, speaking of films, so Kingston Live, the original inspiration for it was Jay Madaw's Live in Kingston film. And of course, you're working with Jay right now on his next film.
Oh man, I love the guy. I really do. I love everyone that was part of that film. Sudak, everyone. And yeah, I guess when he found out about the book, he loved the idea of this, and he created a sort of parallel universe with my life, in that he's taken some creative liberties. But basically, this guy named Bill Welychka, this one hotshot from Toronto, eventually moves to Kingston and tries to recapture his glory years, and is now working at a Kingston TV station doing a morning show, and he's trying to get back to Toronto to be on a national level again. And so throughout the film, he's doing interviews with Kingston musicians for his demo reel. And so when he told me about this idea, I was flattered that he took my story to base it on a tale, but I think it's hilarious that he's made me into this ass, this jerk who doesn't like Kingston at the beginning, who's trying to get back to the big city.
Right.
I think slowly the audience empathizes with the character, but the asshole parts of that character is not me. I play myself in a parallel universe. And anyway, it's a hilarious script. We did a table read a few months ago, and I was laughing. It's hilarious. So he knows me well enough to know that I love wrestling, and so there's a bit of wrestling in the film. Anyway, in the end, obviously, I love Kingston, and I stay in Kingston. And there's a scene where I'm at the plaza, and two townies come up to me, and I'm at the bar by myself, and they're like, "Bill, let's go. What are you doing here? Oh my God, we thought you were dead." And so the title of the film, Still Alive in Kingston, comes from me as these two guys are laughing, walking away. And I say to myself, yeah, I'm still alive here in Kingston. And so that's the name of the Still Alive in Kingston. So
when
it's
can
like
we
a
watch this?
sequel to the first film he did. And it plays off of the first one, but if you've never seen the first one, this one can stand alone.
Cool.
And if you haven't seen the first one, see it. I believe it's online somewhere. If it is, we'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And again, the first one, the thread was live music and interviews with Kingston musicians. And so the funny part about this film is, even though I'm playing myself in this fictitious parallel universe, the interviews with the band members, the bands, are going to be real. And the live stuff is going to be real.
Cool.
So, can you tell us who's going to be featured in it?
You have to ask Jay.
Okay.
He's working on all that stuff. I gave him a wish list of bands that I would love to see in the film, but it's all up to him.
Okay.
Yeah. But that'll probably be out. I know he's got some plans for the Kingston Canadian Film Festival in February.
Okay.
Not to be released in February, but like a table read with some of the scenes being filmed already that have already been done. So I'm thinking throughout next year it'll be done, and I'm thinking February 2025 for a premiere in Kingston.
Love it.
Yeah, I do
that
too.
Sounds amazing.
He's so passionate. Again, we talked about the art and the creativity in Kingston. There's a guy who just loves film, loves filmmaking, loves writing. Another creative, amazing, beautiful person.
No, we're big fans of Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll have him back when the film is ready, and maybe you'll join him as well. We'll talk about the movie.
Yeah, I would love to at some point, once the film is done. There's that promoting of it, and I don't want to do any of the interviews for it. If I am going to be doing any of the interviews, I want him next to me. I consider him a friend now, but I think we're gonna have a fun time promoting that film.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Bill, you mentioned earlier possibly expanding the book. I'm wondering if you've considered talking about your interview skills a little more, because there was a chapter where you dropped a whole bunch of tips about interviewing, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, this guy interviewed Prince without fanboying out. There's got to be more there. There's got to be more wisdom to share.
I always looked at it as a job. Like, I have a job to do. I have to get stuff i.e. out of Prince. I have to, and it was a live broadcast where he was playing and talking. So, I got to engage him enough to get him to keep talking, include the audience, get their questions, traffic cop basically the hour or an hour and a half, I forget how long it was, taking us to commercial breaks and then introducing the live performances. But that excitement happens after, and there is a definite high after. And it's like that with anyone I've ever interviewed where they'll leave the room and then I need to sit by myself, maybe help the cameraman pack up the gear or go to the hotel bar after by myself and think about it and just think how grateful my life is, or in that situation, how happy I am, how happy I was that the interview went, and I look forward to putting it together to share it with the viewers and fans of that act. And again, I come back to this, and I think I said early on that I've never taken it for granted, my fortunate position that I've been bestowed, and worked hard for it too, sure, but it's an art and craft that I take very seriously and that I adore, and that's all I've ever known. But the idea of being passionate about it and being grateful for it and humbled by it, that I can touch people in whatever weird way, again, makes me the happiest guy to wake up every morning in the world. And I do that here in Kingston.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times when people are interviewing others, they like to hear the sound of their own voice. They're not so much worried about what information they're drawing from the other person.
I talk about that in the book.
So, yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because you come across some egos in this business.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I talk about how there are people that I've worked with over the years.
Is this where my name gets mentioned? No.
I'm not mentioning any names or locations.
Oh.
But yeah, on-air people thinking that it's a 50-50 thing where they're a star interviewing a star, or that they're doing the audience a favor by being on their TV screen. And I've always maintained, no, without the audience, we're out of a job. We have nothing. The important part of the equation to me is, well, A, it's the person that I'm talking to. B, maybe even more important than A, is the audience, the people watching. That's why we're there. And I'm just the traffic cop. I'm just the facilitator. I'm just the go-between between what the audience wants to know or with the information they need to know and what the interview subject is trying to convey. Very simple, really.
How is it you've never started a podcast?
I don't have the equipment. Let me explain John's equipment here. We have 3 really high-end microphones here. We have mic stands. We have computers. We have a huge computer board out there that's also a sound board. I wouldn't know where to start. I can borrow your little cassette player, the little red one that you have, and maybe an old realistic microphone. Remember those plastic ones? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't know where to start.
Well, so that's interesting because I remember being surprised earlier in the book. You started from more of a technical background and then worked your way
editing,
on camera. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love editing. I love producing. I love putting stories together. That's my favorite thing. But yeah, you have an amazing thing here. You call it Wise?
Oh, it was rebranded to Soundwise earlier in the year.
Okay,
yeah.
Using the owl theme still.
Yeah, everybody, anytime I talked about rebranding, the first thing people would say is, "Oh, you're keeping the owl, right?" I'm like, I think so.
Titan Sound.
Yeah, so Titan Sound, in my desperation to come up with a name for the business, because I liked that owl imagery, but then it's like, well, owl's kind of an awkward word. It's, doesn't look good on paper. It's awkward to say. And then I looked up scientific names. That particular owl, the first word in the scientific name was Titanidae. So we just cut that in half and that became Titan.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you know that, Ange?
I did not know that.
Titanidae.
Learn something new every day.
There you
That's
go.
like the Latin thing for owl?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But then it had been about 10 years. It was time to sort of mature the business and kind of bring it more in line with what it was doing. So, yeah, Soundwise.
That's awesome.
So we've still got the wise owl, and it all ties together. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I would rather be a guest on a podcast than create one. So
Okay, well, that worked out fine today. So, yeah.
Perfect.
now you have to do all the editing, and I get to go home and drink beer because it's Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe one more thing. There are a lot of great stories in the book. Would you care to share one to maybe entice potential readers?
Oh my goodness. I'll share one. Oh, and it's come up in conversation recently. At the Much Music doc premiere screening in Toronto about a month ago, there was a bit of an after party at Roy Thompson Hall where it was shown. And I remember I walked out into the hallway of all the people leaving, and some people came over to say hi and ask questions about. And then Greg Keeler goes walking by, part of the audience. I go, Greg. He turns around and goes, Bill. I go, get in here. A lot of people want to say hi to you. He goes, oh, okay. So he walked in with a friend of his, and we were just talking, and I introduced him to Amanda, my girlfriend, and he said, Bill has done the greatest special that's ever been done with us. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. He's saying this to Amanda, and I've showed Amanda, and she loved it too. I was on the road with Blue Rodeo for a couple of days, and I share a funny story at how what I realized is after their gigs, you hear a lot of the bands after a gig getting into drugs and alcohol. They keep that party going. The adrenaline is through the roof. Bon Jovi once telling me that, show's over, bang, go back to your hotel room, go to bed. You can't. The adrenaline is through the roof. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you stumble around a hotel room bar till 3 or 4 in the morning trying to come down, or you get into drugs and heroin or coke or whatever. Blue Rodeo figured out years ago, they tire themselves out after a gig, after the meet and greet. They do a ball hockey game, maybe at a nearby community center they've booked till 2 or 3 in the morning, and they have a ball hockey game with the opening band. In this case, it was the Sadies. And by the time they get on the bus, all the hockey sticks go back on the bus or the truck, and they roll down the truck door, and they're off to the next city. By the time they get onto the bus, they're wiped.
Yeah.
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 And I love that. And I was witness to it, and it was great. And,
it's a healthy habit.
Yeah. I'm sure there's wine on the bus, maybe. Some other things too, perhaps. But they figured it out how to do it, how to tour healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they do it in the winter because they know that they're the only game in town. If you pull into Winnipeg in February, chances are no one has visited that city for entertainment for 2 or 3 months.
Not since New Year's Eve.
At least. So yeah, they love to tour Canada in the winter and preserve the summer for their own, their annual show in Toronto, but for their own time. And so, yeah, that's a band I absolutely adore.
Nice. People can buy your book. I know you're doing book signings at Indigo. You've got it locally, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah.
Novel Idea.
I was going to say, don't buy it on Amazon. Go to Novel Idea.
That's
Go to Oscar. Buy it from him.
Support logo. I love Oscar. Thank you,
I dropped
Oscar.
in last week just to say hi and thanks for carrying it. And he going, I don't know what you're doing. Keep on doing it. We're on our second shipment now.
Perfect.
Nice. Okay.
I like that.
But the retailers have been very kind, and I appreciate that too. But billwelychka.ca for more information about the book if you're interested. And at the bottom there's an inquiry that goes straight to me that if you want to buy a signed one, just have it sent to you. I can do it that way if you live far away or wherever.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you for coming. This was great.
This is not even my place. No. Oh, Bill, it's a pleasure to chat with you always, buddy.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Kingston Live. We encourage you to rate us on your listening platform of choice and subscribe where possible. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out kingstonlive.ca. Kingston Live was produced in Kingston by Soundwise. Hosted by John Sanfilippo and Ange Stever. Voiceovers by Riley Jabor and John Sanfilippo. Writing and research by Peter Sanfilippo. Executive producer Rob Howard. Kingston Live is a member of the Canadian Live Music Association. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@kingstonlive.ca.